What's up, guys? Welcome back to another week of Bible study. I'm really excited for this one. I think it's one of our better ones that we've had so far. Hope everyone had a great week. Tonight we're going to be talking about the power of the tongue. And what I mean by that is the weight that our words carry in our lives, in our faith, in the way we go about things. So without further ado, let's get right into our first scripture passage. We're going to James 3, and we'll start at verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you realize that we will be judged more strictly. For we all fall short in many respects. If anyone does not fall short in speech, he is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body also. If we put bits in the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we will also guide their whole bodies. It is the same way with ships. Even though they are so large and driven by fierce winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot's inclination wishes. In the same way, the tongue is a small member and yet has great pretensions. Consider how small a fire can set a huge forest ablaze. The tongue is also a fire. It exists among our members as a world of malice, defiling the whole body and setting the entire course of our lives on fire, itself set on fire by Gehenna. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature, can be tamed and has been tamed by the human species. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who are made in the same likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. This need not be so, my brothers. Does a spring gush forth from the same opening, both pure and brackish water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, produce olives, or a grapevine figs? Neither can salt water yield fresh. This actually came up in just my own personal reading this week and was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the power of speech and words, because I think there's a lot of interesting analogies there. So let's break this down. First, we're talking about not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you realize that we will be judged more strictly. This is a concept that I've talked about in Bible study before. To much is given, much is asked. When you're putting yourself out there, when you're making statements, there's a certain scrutiny that you're held to. And it's important. This is not to dissuade you from spreading the gospel or staking your claim out there, but it is to approach it with a certain level of humility, a certain level of ableness to be corrected, right? Knowing your place. Additionally, if anyone does not fall short in his speech, he is a perfect man. What we see here is that all things that defile come from the mouth. There's a passage in the gospel where the Pharisees are talking about a drinking cup being unclean, and Jesus eating with sinners, that he's unclean. And he says to the Pharisees, it's not what goes in you that defiles you, but what comes out of you that defiles you. And that was a kind of a revolutionary statement in that it approaches more legalistic tendencies in a different light. Now we have this analogy of the horse. You put a bit into a horse's mouth and you can guide the entire horse. The same way the rudder, the small rudder of a ship, directs this entire being. This is an analogy to the way that our words control our own paths. So this is where we get to, words cannot truly be neutral in nature. And we shouldn't treat it as so, as there's some speech that's important, right? When I'm impassioned and emboldened to speak and I'm really laying it out there, that's where I need to tell the truth. That's where I need to think about my speech carefully. And other times it's just kind of idle talk, doesn't matter. I offer that that is not the right way to go about the way we speak, that each word we say carries weight. And if we think and we think more thoughtfully about our speech, I think it can reveal a lot that we wouldn't necessarily know. So in the same way that words can build others up, build yourself up, they can also tear down and damn and curse. It's our responsibility there to be mindful of the way that we talk, to know that our speech is guiding us, to look introspectively and say, are my words leading myself and others to the cross? And if they aren't, maybe that's something you have to think about more. Maybe that's something you have to reevaluate or go to battle with. If you find yourself in just idle talk or just not speaking in the way that you wish to be speaking, go to battle with that. Say that that's something you want to improve on. Be more mindful of it. Take it seriously. Consider how small a fire can also set a huge forest ablaze. This is what I was talking about with the neutral words. We think these things are just useless or not notable, but it's even in the small things that these big effects can happen. It's our day-to-day speech. It's the way that we address others. It's the way that we address authority that guide us in the path that we're going to go down. Talking about the tongue, it's written, with it we both bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings made in the same image and likeness of God. We'll get to it later about the power of life and death lying on the tongue, but that's really what we're talking about here. There's a profound power in the words that we say. We are able to communicate with each other in a way that's so unique, but it does warrant a lot of mindfulness. And I wanted to make another note here about, I say idle speech. And what I mean by idle speech, I mean gossiping, not important speech, kind of just, speaking to hear yourself talk. And what I want to note is that there is a strength and a discipline in silence. That talking your way out of something or talking to show off what you know isn't always the best way to go about it. In fact, many times being silent, being humble enough to know you're in a place to be silent is important. And anyone that knows me knows I have a hard time being quiet. So that's funny. It's something I have to work on. Because what does idle speech do in your life? It can spread error and division. It lacks purpose. It lacks depth. It's not spiritually enriching, right? It's tying you into worldliness more. When you engage in idle talk, when you talk about stupid stuff and you let it occupy your mind, you let it occupy your speech, you just become more and more entangled with these things that you're trying to detach from. And there's also a level of pride. For some people, speech is a means of pride, hearing oneself talk, trying to show off one's own intelligence. So there's a certain humility, strength, and discipline required to bridle your tongue, to control your speech, to not just jabber all the time in this idle talk, but to be purposeful and meaningful every time you speak. And that does require abstaining from speaking sometimes. All right, moving on to our next passage, we're going to Proverbs 18. We'll start with verse 2. Fools take no delight in understanding, but only in displaying what they think. This is the same concept of humility that we were talking about before. And a wise person, a righteous person, someone that's after God's own heart, takes delight in understanding and gaining knowledge rather than just speaking off whatever. Fools take no delight in seeking knowledge or knowing truth. They just like to speak to hear themselves talk, to show off their own intellect, to joke and to gossip, and to engage in these surface level conversations. Verse 4, the words of one's mouth are deep waters, the spring of wisdom, a running brook. Consistent here with what we've been saying, there's a certain depth and importance to the way that we speak. It speaks to the condition of our own soul. The words of one's mouth are deep waters, the spring of wisdom, a running brook. And then verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life. Think about the words being used there. There is intention behind that. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So let's evaluate that twofold, right? The first, the latter being death. Certainly we think of actions bringing about death, right? Like a murder or something more physical than verbal. But I think a good way to conceptualize this is the way we speak about certain people when we gossip or we lie about someone. That is a literal assault on their character. It is an assault on their personhood, on their dignity, and it is speaking death over that person. How many times have we said something that we've regretted, or maybe not even regretted? Sharing something that shouldn't have been shared. Saying something to reach an intended goal, trying to turn someone against another, trying to persuade someone to have a negative opinion of someone. I know I'm guilty of that more than a time or two. That kind of speech is truly speaking death over another. And we use that term and it sounds dramatic, but it's true. So it's important to sit with that. But to that end, while the power of death lies on the tongue, so does the power of life. And I look at that as so encouraging. Speaking life on someone, it does more than just bring a smile to their face. You're enriching their very soul. You are lifting them out of depravity. We have that unique ability to do that, to convey our conversation in such a way that we can speak life over another. And this goes for mindset as well, right? When St. Paul writes about think of the things that are good and true and beautiful frequently. Keep these things in your mind. These are life-sustaining thoughts. Speak about these things. They are life-sustaining words. Literally. Not just figuratively in that they make you feel good and whatever. Serotonin, dopamine going on up there. They are life-providing. In that same way, when we fail to do those things, when we fail to think of the things that are true and beautiful and of God, and we think of the things of the world, we think of gossip and lies and slander and unimportant happenings that are just meaningless. They're base level. When we think of these things and speak of these things, we're speaking death. And while it may seem harmless in the moment, you have to realize that just like the horse's bit, we're being led down a path away from God. So we can choose where we spend our time, our thoughts, our words. Every word that we say is like a seed. The following verse: death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who choose one shall eat its fruit. Every word we say is like a seed, and that seed can bear encouragement and love and uplifting one another and faith and prayer and devotion. And these aren't just words, right? I'm not just like rattling off a list, like truthfully. Or it can bear bad fruits: death, division, bitterness, lies, cynicism, worldliness. And we have these diverging paths. And right, we think of big life decisions determining which path we go down. But it's also in the day-to-day that we're taking a stride down that, whether we know it or not, we're taking certain steps down one of those paths. And speech is a huge part of that. The way we talk is leading us. So my encouragement is to realize the power of your speech and use that to feed life into others, to speak life over yourself. It's one thing to just avoid speaking death, avoid speaking divisive and hatred and bitter things. It's another thing to be proactive in speaking life, in taking that step. And that's personally where I want to get to. So we're going to roll with the fruit analogy here. We're going to roll with the tree and the fruit analogy. We're going to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verses 43 to 45. This is Jesus. A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For people do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles. A good person out of the store of goodness in his heart produces good, but an evil person out of a store of evil produces evil. For from the fullness of the heart the mouth speaks. Two things to get into here. One is the consistency. A bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree produces good fruit. This coexisting of righteousness and sin is not possible in a true, genuine matter. We speak from the overflow of our hearts. I think that's such a great thing to consider. And it's a great way to be introspective with yourself. If you find yourself engaging in speech that's not reflective of where you want to be, evaluate your heart posture. Evaluate where you're at and saying, listen, my intentions are misaligned here. I need to take a step back and really reevaluate. To that same way, if you're in doubt or just a struggle, taking that mindful speech and speaking life, it's an encouragement to where your heart stands. So hateful speech, gossiping speech, lies, that suppose a person with a cold heart. Whereas prayerful, purposeful, life-giving speech supposes someone with a full, righteous heart. And this is not just a way to scale where you're at. It's also a great indication of the mercy that we should be giving others. If you are the recipient or the victim of some kind of speech attack or some kind of slander, or someone's lying about you, that's an opportunity to give mercy, because you understand that the condition of their heart is in a poor place. One cannot simply will themselves to have this life-giving speech and quality. It comes from true repentance and a true seeking of God, that your heart is then filled. And from that overflow, then you speak it. Right? It's an all-encompassing process, right? It's not just one thing or the other. They're both indicative of each other. The condition of your heart determines your speech. And your speech is emblematic of where your heart is. And your heart is determined by your devotion to God, your seeking of God. Your genuine seeking of God, I should say. And that's not something that can be faked. Right? Someone can lie, or someone can flatter, and they could speak in a way that seems good, but it's not truly good without that genuine intention. And people can sniff that out, right? You know it when you see it. I think that's a good analogy I've written down. Speech is an X-ray of your soul. It is evidence of your character and an emblem of your God. The way someone talks shows you something about them that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And maybe that's an obvious thing. If you didn't hear someone talk, you wouldn't know much about them, right? But the way in which they talk, the words that they choose, the spirit in which they choose to speak it with, it shows you a lot about the person. And someone with a lot of charisma or full of joy is going to jump off a page far more than someone that's cold and shut off and non-receptive would be. It is evidence of your character. That's tough. It's tough, and it's true, because I can think of many times where I'm engaging in speech that I shouldn't be in. And I could feel my demeanor change. I could feel the words that I say start changing, and it's almost like a free fall. And then you have that moment where it's like, what am I talking about right now? Why am I talking about this? Or you have a moment of regret later on. It's like, I really shouldn't have said that. That wasn't the most upstanding thing for me to do. But that only comes when you're mindful of the power that your speech has. And it's an emblem of your God. That is the most important thing. The way you speak says a lot about the God that you serve. When you are speaking life over people, when you are not engaging in normal talk, idle talk, gossip, slander, unimportant base level talk, that says a lot about the way that you care about your God, a lot about the devotion you have to your Lord. You allow yourself to become a mouthpiece for the kingdom of heaven in those moments. When you both abstain from normal talk and you engage in this emboldened, life-giving speech. I had another note here. I don't want this to be misconstrued as we should just say nice things all the time and flatter everyone and just lie, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying to flatter or to over-embellish, because at the core of this entire Bible study is truth-telling. It is a certain honesty and humility with oneself to make it a priority to tell truth, to bear good witness. When we center our speech around truth-telling and not on embellishment and flattery, you can have genuine conversation with someone. If someone is just blowing smoke up your rear end, flattering you to no end, that's not conducive of any real good, right? They're just inflating your ego. Who knows why they're doing it? They're probably trying to direct you in a certain way. But this is not a promotion for flattery. It is a promotion for honesty. Moving on. James 1:26, and then we're coming back to Proverbs. James 1:26. If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, his religion is in vain. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. So we have here in the scripture an acknowledgement for that desire to talk all the time, that desire to have idle speak and to gossip. If that weren't the case, it wouldn't be a challenge to bridle your tongue. And when we say bridle, we mean control and be mindful of and have dominion over the way we speak. That's a true power, a true virtue, to have a bridled tongue. If anyone thinks he is religious but does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, his religion is in vain. That's a bold claim. I mean, if you read James, there's a lot of bold claims everywhere. I love James for that reason. Words are not minced at all. But especially here. There's some practicality to it. This is a necessity. This is something that we must do in the Christian life that is often overlooked. We must control the way we speak and carry ourselves in a manner that is consistent with a pursuit of righteousness and holiness. We must speak in a way that's consistent with that. And then just that second note, religion that is pure and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. And the stains of the world are evident in the way that we talk. When we're talking about whether it be crass stuff or gossipy stuff. This is the world making an imprint on you. It is not God making that imprint on you. It is the world around you making that imprint. Let's go back to Proverbs for a second. A brief second. Proverbs 21. Proverbs 21:23. Those who guard mouth and tongue guard themselves from trouble. Proud, boastful, scoffer is the name, those who act with overbearing pride. It's written that our mouths, our speech is something that is to be guarded, something that is in need of defending. Our natural inclination is to speak abundantly, to speak of poor things, of unfruitful things. But those who guard their mouth and their tongue from these words, from engaging in this talk, guard themselves from trouble. Now that's a proverb I wish I internalized, a decade ago. It could have saved me a lot of trouble in my life. just shut up. It's honestly, it's great advice. Guard your mouth and your tongue. Be so mindful of the way that you talk. It is from like the abundance of speech that trouble does arise, that true problems can occur. So I just want to reiterate the power in silence. Just because one is not the loudest in the room does not mean that they're not the most knowledgeable, or does not mean that they're not the strongest or the most faithful. It is not a competition to see who can talk the most and the loudest and the smartest. That is not what's being proposed. A discipline of bridling your tongue, it's combined with like humility. Right? You have to have a certain humility about yourself to shut up, to listen. That's an important factor too, is the listening aspect. Be an active listener. Try to learn from people. Don't just listen to get the next word out of your mouth or to talk about yourself some more, or the things that you like, or the things that you're doing. Don't use speech as a platform to celebrate your pride. I have noted here thoughtful speech. I think when I wrote that note, what I was referring to is taking your time, speaking when it is important to say something, not speaking when it is unimportant to say something. Silence can glorify God in ways that some words never could. Silence in prayer, that is not a bad thing. To be silent in the presence of God is not a bad thing. If you find yourself with nothing to say, you don't need to blabber on. You can just say in silence. And then our last passage for today, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 36. Verses 33 to 37. Sorry. And we're back to the tree and the fruit analogy. If you haven't got that yet, it's a common theme. All over the place, we have the farming analogies. But it's great because it's timeless. Either declare the tree good and its fruit good, or declare the tree rotten and its fruit rotten. For a tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you say good things when you are evil? For from the fullness of the heart the mouth speaks. A good person brings forth good out of a store of goodness, but an evil person brings forth evil out of a store of evil. I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will render an account for every careless word they speak. By your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. I don't think I can convey the importance of speech more than that right there. By your words you will be acquitted, by your words you will be condemned on the day of judgment. Hearing that, how much mindful would you be of your speech, knowing that not one single careless word goes unnoticed? Not one simple harmless gossip moment goes unnoticed. They're not throwaways. Our speech is not a series of words that we throw away and write them off. They can be uplifting gifts. They can be wise consolations. Or they could be sharp knives that we literally use to just beat each other down and speak evil over one another. And which one we choose to practice is important. if our goal is heaven, if our goal is Christ, if our goal is to be a good tree, bearing good fruit, it comes from our heart, and from the heart, it comes out from our speech. I keep thinking of just the word mindful. I've probably said it 50 times since I've started this video. But I really think that is the approach, is just a mindfulness about the way that we talk. Taking the time to think about what you're saying. Thinking about why you're saying it. What is the intention behind it? Is it well aligned? Is it mal-aligned? Is this something I shouldn't be engaging in? I understand that's an effort. That's a task. But then it becomes automatic. And then you find yourself doing it unconsciously. And now you're in a much better place. And your heart is in a much better place. And your words are in a much better place. And you can glorify God with your speech rather than tearing down his creation with it. So our goal is to be that good person speaking from an overflow of goodness and gratitude in our heart. How do we get there? What are the practical steps to getting to that point? 1, to pray over it. Pray for the strength over your own speech, the strength to have the discipline to bridle your own tongue. Make it a practice and a habit to recollect past conversations, whether that be with whoever, whether that be with a family member or your boss or a priest or, your partner, a coworker, whatever. Recollect, think back on the way that you spoke, especially in times that you weren't proud of what you were saying. Think about the conditions that brought you there. Was it a need to please other people? Was that why you were speaking? Were you looking to elevate yourself, get a laugh? Was it a prideful move? And then think of the times that you said something that you felt good about, out of a true sense of humility and a true sense of love that you spoke. Think of those things and do them. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say true? Is it gracious? And is it necessary to be said? And if you get all 3 of those, boom, go. Green light, talk. If one of those is missing, maybe pump the brakes. Maybe think about what you're about to say, because once something's said, it's hard to rescind it. It's hard to fully get it back. And I always try to make it practical to the culture, to the modern day that we live in. What are the ways that we live the Christian life in the modern world? We're combating so many different forces. We're pulled in so many different ways that are unique to this generation. How do we make it practical? How do we do it? Set yourself apart. We talk about the meaning of holiness, to be set apart. And that means in speech as well. If the way you talk or the conversations you engage in, the purpose in which you carry yourself doesn't align with everybody else, that's good. That's fine. Embrace being set apart. Embrace that difference. Don't just make concessions with your speech because of a certain group you're around. That's something, I'm at fault as well, as much as anybody else is. Don't concede on your speech to appease whoever you're talking to gain brownie points or laughs, to build yourself up with it. You don't need to impress others by appealing to the way they speak. Speak the truth. Carry yourself with a profound level of honesty, like an obnoxious level of honesty. Make it a point in your life not to tell a lie. Speak with a lot of gratitude a lot of humility, credit where credit is due. And like I just said, embrace being set apart, embrace speaking differently. Because like Jesus says, by your words you will be acquitted, by your words you will be condemned. The power of life and death lie on the tongue. These are no small matters. They're not unimportant. They're not throwaways. And when we're in the pursuit of Christ in a genuine manner, how could we possibly live for him fully and speak in a manner that's not reflective of that? Submit the way you talk to God, if that's something you struggle with. Let's see. All right, that's all I got for today. That was good. I really do think that's a great topic, though. Just the power that we have in the way that we talk. How important was it the words that Jesus said on earth? You don't see Jesus engaging in base level talk without purpose, without good intention. But it's very easy to let a bad intention manifest in the way that we talk. So if you see yourself slipping up, use it as a moment to be introspective, to evaluate the root cause, and then to go to battle with it and to try to root that out. Yes, my challenge for anyone watching that's made it to the end this week, just be mindful of the way that you talk. Take that extra time to put the thought behind it. Is it true? Is it gracious? Is it necessary? And if it is, and when that moment comes, speak boldly, unapologetically, and if it's rooted in Christ, that's all you can ask for. All right, until next time, I don't know when that will be. We might do another one this week, so stay tuned.